know, it wasn't that many years ago that Lake Erie had the title of being the Dead Sea. But thanks to what I'd consider the conservation effort of the century, Lake Erie is now alive and thriving. In fact, many experts consider the Western Basin area to be the walleye capital of the world. I guess I'd probably have a little trouble arguing with them.
Dave's got one.
Good one, Jenny.
You bet. You bet, brother.
Good fish.
Yeah, him right now. You get him up here, big boy.
Yeah, I'll get him up here just as soon as he wants to get up here.
He's got some heft to him, guy.
Oh, yeah.
You betcha. That's what we need.
Wait a second.
Okay. He's got some size to him,
Sure,
guy.
he has some size.
He's a good fish.
Oh, yes.
Good guy.
Lake Erie walleye.
Hey, that's a nice,
Nice fish, babe. You want to grab him there, babe?
Here, I'm going to do it the easy way. Here.
All right.
nice.
Over over that. Nice fat fish. Yes, sir.
You know, it's quite a feeling when you can take a walleye like that and do that. But that's Lake Erie. You know, people have talked for years about the walleye factor out of Lake Erie, but people said, hey, boy, there are a lot of small fish. And that's just not the case. With the right patterns and the right technique, there's a tremendous amount of big fish, like that 5-pounder we just released. Today, we're going to show you one of those patterns where you can come out here and catch a lot of fish, but a lot of size to them as well. What do you find these fish commonly do when it gets this calm out? Slide off the reef and just down, or?
Well, it depends on the boat traffic, of course, but it's not uncommon to see them off the edge of the reef.
Boat traffic. I've seen some places out here with 200 ships on them,
I'm telling
on
you.
one reef.
But,
That's got to spook all the big fish, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. They're very spooky. But it's not uncommon. Like, you know, we've been working those edges, like 8 to 12-foot breaks, and we've been finding a little more activity there than we did in the shallows earlier.
Uh-huh.
So as the day progresses now, these fish will be laying off those edges, but they'll move back up. And as you can see, they relate to the structure. You know, they have those sharp breaks and rock piles and so forth.
I just had a bump. Come on back.
You know, you take the lake itself, a lot of people wonder about the increased pressure as far as it being able to sustain that kind of pressure.
Uh-huh.
And it seems like the longer we go, the stronger the fishery gets.
Well, I know. You know, when we were here a couple of years ago, we caught a lot of fish.
Uh-huh.
But the size of the fish that we've caught this trip have been just about twice as big, I would say.
Yeah, we're getting nice fish, and, you know, that'll fluctuate from year to year, but some of these areas that we've been in today, historically, are some of the best big fish areas in the lake.
Mm-hmm.
And this period of time, you know, in the fall, is an excellent period of time.
Okay, well, you're talking about big fish, Jimmy. What's big fish?
Well,
I mean, when, you know, I know people don't think about Erie as a big fish lake, per se. Yet I know of a couple of fish that are 13 and 14 pounds that have come out of here.
Well, they've had walleyes caught up over 20 pounds out of Lake Erie. In 1945, one was 20 pounds, 2 ounces, caught right up north of us here in Colchester Reef
Oh, yeah?
by a woman trolling.
That's a big walleye. What do you think about color, Jim?
Sir?
I said, what do you think about color? I mean, we've caught them this morning on about every color there is.
We've already have times when it's extremely clear, you know, like 8 to 12 foot of visibility.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, we find that the silvers and whites are far more productive than you would take your brighter colors, you know, chartreuse and so forth.
Uh-huh.
And a lot of things change. And in those extremely clear water conditions, we go down to 4 to 6 pound test models many times in open water. And, of course, clear, transparent lines.
Uh-huh. In the course of a year, is there any variance in color? I mean, is like spring predominantly, say, a white or a chartreuse, and summer predominantly this? Or is it just a thing that you got to go out there on a day-to-day basis and find out?
I'd say on a day-to-day basis, depending on the water conditions.
They'd be better off a weight-forward spinners having a whole gamut of colors with them.
You bet. You bet.
If you had to pick a half a dozen key colors for the weight-forward spinners, what would you pick, like the toms?
I would pick the silver, white, black, chartreuse. I'd say those are my colors. I wouldn't have to go any further than that.
Just those four?
Yeah. Yeah, those are the colors I would stick to. Occasionally, bright orange we found is very productive for big fish in, you know...
when they come fairly shallow?
Late July and August. No, in deep water.
In deep water?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I found it very productive.
Boy, a lot of times orange, you know, orange and reds will lose their identification or their color, if you will. once you get to any kind of depth at all, maybe it's just winding up a very neutral color in that particular case.
You know, I've read a lot of stuff on colors, and like Meyer says, it doesn't matter what color it is as long as it's chartreuse. And
well, that says something for the word confidence, though, when you're
you
fishing
bet.
as well.
That means a lot. And you take the colors that you select. It's important that I think it's more important that the lure, you know what it's doing, and you can gain the confidence to feel that lure, the action it's got, and so forth at all times.
Now, I'm glad that you mentioned that, Jim. Maybe you could explain, for the viewer's sake, just what you mean by feeling that lure, because I think people think they just take a weight-forward spinner and chunk it out there, and there's a lot more to it than that, isn't there?
You bet. You have to go ahead and have the pressure of that blade spinning on that rod tip.
Uh-huh.
You know, like I'm fishing kind of downwind, and I'll give her kind of a thump like that, and I can feel the pressure of that blade spinning. When that lure starts to settle, it gives it a walking effect, you know, like you're fishing a jig.
Uh-huh.
But I can definitely feel that spinner give a thump, just like your rod. You can feel it when you're bringing her up.
Jim sure covered a lot of information in just a couple of minutes, didn't he? I think the only thing we forgot to talk about was how to fish the weight-forward spinner using the countdown method. So with the aid of Good Fishing's animated graphics, let me show you now just how this deadly system works. First of all, however, be aware that as your boat approaches a school of walleyes, they're either going to swing wide or split and go around your boat. So keep that in mind as you're casting. Plus the fact that a standard weight-forward spinner sinks at the rate of about 1 foot per second. So once you find the depth at which the walleyes are actively feeding, cast out, count it down to that depth, start your retrieve, and then hang on.
Oh,
How do you feel, babe?
oh, it ain't much.
Hey, that ain't shabby, babe.
It's better than I thought.
You want a net?
Oh, he's 3. Whoa.
He's coming up here.
I'm just trying to get him out. You got one too? Good shot. Yeah, this is a good fish.
Catch dinner for Uncle Babe. Oh, yeah, nothing wrong with that.
Leave him go. Leave him go.
Oh.
He's getting, that fish is fighting beautifully.
You want all of that white water, huh? Yeah,
That's good.
Finally! Yeah! You notice what color, Tom?
Yeah.
Now look at this. Whoops.
Oh.
This is classic, I think, of a healthy fat fish. Look at this. Hold on, Tom.
Good.
Look at the head on this thing. Yes, I seen that. This one is just like a little football, a tiny little head and a big fat body. It looks like a North Dakota fish. We want to save these two?
Yeah. Let them, okay. Let them swim.
I need another crawler here.
We went on to catch and release over 50 walleyes that afternoon and evening on Lake Erie, and it proved to me once again that the fishing on Lake Erie is just getting better and better. So the next time you hear somebody talk about the good old days of fishing, you tell them the good old days are happening right now on Lake Erie.
You know, if you're a bass fisherman, you probably use your electric trolling motor 10 times more than your big engine. And with that much use, your batteries need proper care and maintenance. Here's some easy tips you can do. 1, always use a hydrometer or a voltage meter to determine the correct amount of charging your battery needs. 2, always completely recharge the battery. 3, check the water level before charging. Add some if necessary, but only distilled water. 4, always recharge your battery within 24 hours after use, and put a full charge in it before storing for winter. And finally, remember, a trickle charge is always best for deep cycle bass. It's a real steep break. I'm in about 25 feet of water, and we're throwing up on kind of sand break, and there's cabbage weeds down the edge of it.
Okay, about where we're landing with the spinner bait, how deep is it?
Should be about 8 foot of water.
Okay, that seems perfect.
But
Is there
I
a weed
may
line
be
that
out.
comes out?
Yeah, there's a, right up in front of us, there's a little scattered stuff right here. Yeah, we're not to the good stuff. I never like to run right up on top of the good stuff. I like to stop a little bit short and just take the time, you know?
I just like to creep up on them, Babe, simply because by the time I get there, I know what I'm doing. I've got the trolling motor going right. I've got my bait working right. And when I get to the best area, I want everything working properly. So when them fish are on, boy, you got to be on the ball.
Well, and I've lost a little bit of what you're talking about there. When I used to fish the national tournaments all the time, Ed, I mean, I was running around that lake with my 150 and my big boat, and I still use it. In reservoirs and stuff, I use the big boat. For up here, this little thing with a 50 on it, that's all I need. You notice when I'm throwing that thing out, I'll drop it, throw it, and then just leave it start to fall instantly. Let it fall right into the tops of the cabbage. Yeah, you'll get hung a little bit, you know, but let it... I'm going to guess 95% of them or more will hit it when it's dropping down. See, that's an advantage in a break like this, too. I still haven't ground my reel, and I'm still coming down that break. So I'm just picking the rod up and pumping it and letting it helicopter and tumble right on down the thing.
Okay, what you're saying is that when you're doing this, you're watching that line like a hawk.
Absolutely.
I mean, you have to. If that line moves sideways or just stops abruptly and you know it should be deeper there, you just set the hook, right? You don't ask questions.
Anything that doesn't feel like the lure falling all by itself, I set the hook. And sometimes you get weeds doing that, you know, but... I think
Sometimes that line will just go plain slack before it gets to the bottom, right?
Right here is where they should be. Absolutely.
I'll tell you, babe, I'd rather fish than anything, I believe, really. And the more I fish, especially bass, the better I like it.
Well, there's so many.
There's one.
You got a good one?
Oh, yeah, you better believe it.
Probably the size of that little mouse that
I haven't seen him, but I'll tell you what.
There's big fish on this break, I know that.
Boy, he hit good. He hit really good.
I could use it.
Oh, there he goes. Yeah, yep. Come on, baby. Just take your time down there. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Do I have to net my own fish or get him out, or do you help?
I didn't bring a net. I figured you fish and turn them in some. You know, you should know how to lip them. They're
Oh,
right.
you bet. You bet. Oh, my God. Look at the size of that fish. He's got to be 3 or 4.
Well, all I seen was a mouth come up, but that was a big mouth.
Whoop. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, that fish is bigger than 3 or 4
I'm
pounds.
going to take my time, babe. I don't want to rush this one.
That fish is bigger than 3 or 4 pounds. I'd get him in.
You think so?
I think that's
Okay.
I just seen a mouth come up, but that's a big fish. I think that fish will go 4 or 5 pounds maybe. Sure, we'll see.
Holy buckets, look at that.
So I say, I think it...
Oh, he's at least 4.5. 5? Oh, that's a beauty. My goodness. Oh, boy. Oh.
That's a heck
We
of a
don't
way
have to keep him, do we?
No.
Should I put him back?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
You know something? It's a really great feeling when you release a big fish. Oh, sure, some people might not believe you when you tell them about a nice fish you let go, but you'll know, and really that's all that matters. Say, let me show you now in greater detail exactly how I fish a spinnerbait for breakline bass. Now, this particular spot Ed and I were fishing had a mixture of coontail and cabbage weeds growing out of the edge of the breakline in 12 to 15 feet of water. There, the weeds thinned out and the water dropped off to 25 feet or so. We would cast our spinnerbaits out right to the edge of the weed line and let it free fall or helicopter down the edge of the break. Now, it's very important to pay attention to your line and the feel of the blade as it spins going down, because this is when 90% of your strikes will happen. And if you're not paying close attention, you're going to lose a lot of fish. But if you are a line watcher, hey, watch this.
There we go. We're just about on that corner of that break where I got mine.
We're right back on it, Ed.
Oh, you got one.
Oh, I got a big fish, too.
Hey, that looks like a dandy.
Felt that
Did he
spinnerbait
hit hard or what?
just cracked it.
Really?
Well, I'm telling you, this is a big fish. Just went, boom. You know how they pound it?
You know, when it's that bump, you know, that solid hit, you know it's a
I'm
good
telling
size
you,
bass.
I got a big bass here.
Oh,
or
yeah.
a big something. Oh, it's a bass.
Oh, my goodness sakes, that is a nice fish. Oh, that's a beauty. Oh, my
Come on
goodness.
back, you
Hey,
man.
that's as good as mine or a little bigger, maybe.
This is a big fish.
I know it is.
This is a
You
big
need
fish.
some help?
Well, let's see what Mama says.
Well, let's see. I want to see how you handle it.
She's a brute. Oh.
Let's
Eddie, this
see.
one is-
Oh, that's a... Oh, babe, that's
a big
look,
fish.
that's a beautiful fish.
Look at you. This thing swallowed halfway. It's in the side of her mouth.
That is a beautiful fish. I hate to say it, but it's bigger than the one I caught. That's got to be close to 6,
Yeah.
if not 6.
There we go.
Oh, that's a beautiful fish. Boy, look at the nice markings on that. Oh, that's
Look at her tail is still worn off from
Yep.
spawning this
Yep,
spring.
yep.
Some of these big females go nuts.
If she had eggs in her, babe, she'd weigh 7, 8 pounds. Oh, babe, I'll tell you what, when you release fish like that, that's wonderful. There it goes.
Boy, she's a big fish.
Oh. You know, I wonder, babe, wonder what a fish thinks when you catch them, you bring them in a boat, and then you let the fish go. They must think or something, huh? What do you think?
I've wondered
know,
that myself, but
That's a funny
you
thought.
talk about yes, it is. You talk about an unusual experience. This dude is just trucking down on the weed line doing this thing, and all of a sudden, whap, and one
Yeah.
of the bait fish fight back, whip him. You know, I don't know. I do know this, though, that there's been a lot of studies done, you know, at tournaments and so forth. Those released fish go back and they're biting right away again. Well, let's head back up this break. That's two
Well,
big
I don't know.
fish.
We took 2 big fish off of there. Do you think there's
See,
any more?
Well, right at the edge of the, you know, I said there was a little plateau there.
Uh-huh.
Right at the edge of there is one little tiny skinny finger of cabbage that's maybe 8 foot wide on the top, and it goes out, and they're sitting on that finger of cabbage.
Say, babe, I've got a question for you that I'd like to ask. Oh,
there
you
we
got
go.
a good one this time. Wow. It looked like a good strike. I just happened to be looking over that way.
I think she's got me in cabbage, though.
Oh, yeah, that looks like a fairly decent fish.
Well, I think it's a fish and weeds both.
What size pound test line do you use, babe, or prefer when you're doing this, dropping spinner baits down?
Usually 8, believe it or not.
8?
Uh-huh.
Even when you're into cabbage and the weeds?
Well, that's why this one buried me right in the middle of that stuff. Boy,
Well,
that
I
wind
found
is
out
howling.
when you hit them like that, they'll put their nose right down and dive right into those weeds.
I've got a ton
Is he
of
coming
weeds.
now?
Look at this.
Is it coming?
Look at that. It's like a
Ah.
submarine coming across the
Well,
surface.
that's all right. That happens. Oh,
She
that's a
buried-
nice fish. That's a good way fish. You bet.
It's a nice fish, but I mean,
Huh?
it's buried right in a ton of, and then he's trying to jump with that stuff on. Go ahead, shake it off. That's fine with me. Ouch.
Oh, that's a nice bass.
Well, I'll tell you what, you
Now,
give,
you
me,
put 6 of those in the boat, and you've got a nice stringer.
you give me a limit of fish like this
Oh,
in any
yeah.
tournament, and I'll win 95% of them.
Yeah, you bet you will.
You're
That's
solid
2.5, 3 pound fish
2.5
right there.
pound
Yeah.
fish.
Yeah.
Pretty fish.
I think I had a hit back there.
Well, it's probably on that same break where that fish just came from. We were just coming down
Oh,
over
maybe
the
I
front.
didn't. I've got a piece of coontail on this one.
Yeah, there's heavy coontail. There's cabbage up in that other pocket. I'm going to slide us right back up here just a little bit, Ed. You might chunk out back over on this side,
I got her.
because I'm just about paralleling that break right now. I want to
Yeah,
find...
I can see the edge out there.
We may have spooked all of the big fish off of here, and we may not have. I don't know, but they're right exactly on that tip. I'm sure there is, too.
Well, I'm
But
going to
I don't know if we're going to take any more big fish out of it.
You don't think so?
That happens so often. You slide up to a primo spot and you get a school of active fish on it. You'll pop those biggest fish your first couple. That's why I never run up on a spot.
There he goes.
You got a pig.
Oh, hey, look at that. He won't even come.
I'm telling you, you got a big fish.
Whoa.
That's what's nice about this pattern when it works. And it doesn't.
I think he's down in those weeds, and I'm not kidding you. He is
That's
buried.
a big fish.
He is buried right down in
Ooh.
there. Ooh. Did you get another one now, too? Uh-oh,
I don't
here
know
he
if it was
comes.
a fish or
I'm
not.
trying to get him out of there.
I'm coming
Oh,
up to it a
babe,
little
this has
bit
got to
for you.
be at least 5. At least.
Ooh, Eddie.
Oh, look at that fish.
You got 19 pounds
Yeah,
of weight
that's
with it,
all
but
right,
that's
though. That's all right.
Get him in.
I'm going to get him in. I'm
That
not
is a-
fooling around with this one. Uh-oh. He's starting now. No one. Oh, there he goes.
I'm telling you, that's a giant. Oh. You got so many weeds with him, you can't even fight it. Just grab it.
That's all right. I'm going to get him anyway.
Oh,
Oh, my God. Look at that. Gee. I got to tell you, that's my big bass of the year.
is it really?
Oh, look at that.
That's a beaut. Well,
Oh,
see,
babe,
you know, that's
that
what's
is-
nice about, like I said, this kind of a pattern. When the day is right, and with the storm going to be here in a day or two, I'm going to guess, it's big fish
I got to
time.
tell you that this is my biggest bass of the year.
You want to
No
save it?
doubt. No.
Best
Biggest bass
fisherman
I-
true to heart, Eddie.
Oh, look at that. Oh, look at that, huh? That would win the tournament for us, babe.
That'd
I'll
win
tell
a
you.
lot of tournaments.
Oh,
Eddie.
what a beautiful. I'm going to put her back.
All righty.
Okay, here we go.
Eddie, now that's a beautiful bass.
Babe, I'll
Look
tell
at
you
her
what.
go.
There she goes. What a day. I'll tell you, I haven't had a day like this in a long time. It's been a long time since we fished together, and I really appreciate it. I
Each
really
time,
do.
though, is a lot of fun, Ed. And that's, you know, in a pattern like this, we've caught a lot of big bass today. But it's that kind of a pattern where you get the right days, the right situation, the right conditions. Boy, it's dynamite.
I think everything was just right today. It just worked out perfect.
If I told you something that could result in hooking up to 50% or more of your strikes, would you listen? I'll bet you would. And you can improve your success dramatically simply by sharpening your hook properly. By using a stone, or better yet, a small flat file, begin by sharpening the bottom of the hook point flat. Then sharpen each side on a slant from the hook point to the tip of the barb. Now, if you were to look closely, you'd see 3 flat sides and 3 extremely sharp cutting edges, rather than just a round hook point ordinarily found. So sharpen all of your hooks, whether old or new, and I'm sure you'll see your percentages of hookups go way up. Cookbook recipe.
Have you ever had leftover fish and didn't want to feed it to your cat? Well, have I got an easy solution for you. Try making a fish and cheese ball. All it takes is a few simple ingredients and a couple minutes of your time. To start with, add 1 3-ounce package cream cheese, 1/4 cup butter, 1 teaspoon horseradish, 1 teaspoon mustard, and a dash of salt and pepper, and 1 cup flaked fish. Stir the ingredients together, then refrigerate for 2 hours. Remove the mixture, form into a ball, and then roll into a parsley and chopped pecan mixture. And to save time, I prepared one in advance. So simple and yet so delicious.
Most of you have probably heard the old saying, all fishermen are liars except you and me, and sometimes I'm not so sure about you. Well, when I tell you about a call I got this past summer from my good friend Captain Jim Fofferich, I think you'll see why the old adage popped into my mind. Jim explained that he and his pals, Bob Archer, Tommy Frisch, and Tom Mayer, were catching lots of nice walleyes on crankbaits late in the summer in shallow water. Now that may sound strange to most of you walleye fishermen who are probably fishing deep that time of the year. But as we're always reminded, walleyes are predators, and predators go where there's food. But rather than just having me talk about it, come along and see what happened. There you go, Jimmy. One good one.
Reeves got another one.
You got the net, Jim?
I got him. Good fish, Reeves.
Well, about
Good fish.
typical Erie fish here. Yeah, thanks. You hold still, Jimmy.
That's a good guy, buddy.
I can just picture a crankbait going right
See
through.
slammer good?
One little bump on the back, that's probably why I only got him in that back hook.
I've already seen those walleyes up in these shallows, babe, chasing gizzard shad. And the minnows actually break the surface, and the walleye right up there, right behind them with the mouth open, you know. You can catch them all year long on the crankbaits.
But usually August and September is going to be your best shot.
Yeah, that's what I enjoyed, because like I say, they get up in these shallow water places, and it's a lot of fun.
It's just the kind of a day where the fish will just slide right up in there for a little while and pound them and slide right back out, you know. You get good weather like this. I think we got a storm coming. It got warm, too.
Yep, it does. They're not charging the bait real hard at times, but I've seen a time on these crankbaits where they just utterly just virtually almost tear the rod out of your hand.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people don't use cranks for walleyes, and they should.
Miss him?
My hand slipped off the reel. I went and set the hook, and I don't know how I missed him. I don't know how a guy can miss a fish on a
We
crankbait.
ought to be banging one in here just any second now with this right along the shore here.
I
Got one.
Oh, good shot.
It's a good fish, too.
Oh, yeah?
Boy, they're grabbing it
Where's
slow and quick.
Whoa, hang on. Yeah, I'll get a net. I'll get a net.
Get it hooked real good.
Oh, I'm hooked on the front. Clumsy as a true elephant.
Good fish.
Good shot, Jim.
That's a nice fish.
Well, Jim and hooks his fish. Let me show you in greater detail exactly how we were working this rocky structure. By controlling the drift of our boat so that we stayed just out of the shallow water, we were able to cast into the area of actively feeding fish. The walleyes were up feeding on huge schools of gizzard shad that congregate on the rocky shoals in late summer, especially in the morning and early evening hours.
Crankbaits often imitate feeding shad and are a natural for taking walleyes in this situation. The best lures we found were shadlings, snipes, and Hottentots, although other similar baits may work as well. But you know, when you think of Lake Erie walleye fishing, you normally think of the weight-forward spinner. So I asked Jim how he thought crankbait stacked up against the weight-forward spinner as we continued fishing.
No, you're right. The weight-forward spinners are the bread and butter of Lake Erie, babe. But when you got the right conditions, crankbaits provide a different perspective to the fishery and a lot more, just a lot of fun.
It's fast, too. Well, of course, you know, when a guy's casting a weight-forward spinner, too, you can catch them pretty fast on that, too. But, boy, when they come up here and start slamming these crankbaits...
Well, you can cover a lot of ground, and, you know, you can add a different perspective to your crankbaits, you know. A lot of them, you know, won't go too deep, but you can just go ahead and run a weight ahead of that crankbait and use it as a countdown lure like you would a weight-forward spinner.
There's a fish there.
And you can use those guys in 30 foot of water.
What was that? I'm sorry, I was...
So you can put a weight ahead of the crankbait and fish it like out in deep water, you know, and use it like a countdown system.
Uh-huh.
And we've already used them in 25 and 30 foot of water.
Well, how do you rig that weight up? Have you got one rig?
Yeah, we got a shaft we put ahead of the lure.
Well, let me see it.
And then just a standard bullet sinker like you use for bass fishing.
Because I know a lot of times you try and pinch a sinker on or something like that, it always goofs the action of the bait up.
Well, this is an
What do you
idea
got here?
Tom Mayer come up with. And he reasoned that, you know, a lot of your crankbaits will back over in tentacles, so you put a shaft ahead of it.
Uh-huh.
So then you can ride that bullet
Well, that's
sinker.
just a piece of wire.
Yeah, just a piece of wire. There's nothing bend on there. Just do it in a few seconds.
But that doesn't affect the action of the bait?
No, she comes down through there and she'll sink good, and she just wobbles right through there.
Looks great.
And you can, you know, the deeper the water and the quicker you want to get down, you just use a heavier weight. And it works great.
It looks good.
It casts like a bullet.
Any particular color you found?
Jim. Oh, there we go. There's another one.
You got the net, Jim?
I got him. I'm with you, babe.
He just... Any particular color, Jimmy, you found that
I
better?
like that blue and silver shadling. It's my favorite. By Lindy. It's a good fish.
You get it?
Got him, guy. There he goes, babe.
Nice fish.
I suppose...
Nice fat fish.
Look at that. Bait fell right out of him.
Man, that's a nice fish.
Nice fish.
I don't care where you go in the world, babe. That is one nice
It's a pretty
walleye.
fish. It's a pretty fish. Solid 4 pounds.
Yeah,
That's the
good
kind of
solid.
fish I think that a guy, you know, a person, tourist, or just a fisherman coming to Lake Erie can expect to get a lot of fish in this category. I would say this is a good average for here, wouldn't you?
The way it's been running the last few days, it's been a good average.
But you know how it goes. Somebody catches a nice fish and the big fish stories just start to flow. And as big as that walleye was, let me tell you about the time you get light line. I grew up reasonably close to the Mississippi River. We had more fun catching big carp when I was a kid than I can tell you. That was the first fish I ever caught that was large, was big carp.
When I was a kid. Bullheads and carp.
Angleworms and corn. Angleworms were our best.
Nickel's worth of fish hooks if you can afford it.
Well, we'd take a big old cane pole and store string, and we'd go down the Stony Brook Creek. There was a big hole there, and just bobber fish with angleworms. And you'd hit a big fish, and when the bobber went down and you'd set the hook, you'd throw it over your shoulder like so and run up the bank. That's the way we used to do it. We'd just run right up the bank and slide those big dudes out. We'd get them 20, 30, 40 pounds sometimes doing that.
More
That was a
fun,
lot of fun.
more fun than catching crickets, huh?
Hey, I'll tell you what. When it really comes right down to it, whatever's stretching your string, do you really care as long as they give you a good fight?
That's right, exactly.
Babe, the best fight I ever had was a 30-pound carp in the South Bay of Pelee on Lake Erie. And,
Hooked him in the tail?
hey, in the tail, and that fish changed its genetic background so many times coming in. We had from a catfish to a big walleye to a big muskie. And then here it comes, old Gasper Goo.
We're-
A lot of loads of fun.
Oh, yeah. We were filming up in Saginaw Bay last year and had Bud Reiser with me. And we're out there trolling crankbaits. And he hooks into a fish, and I mean, that fish took off for the wild blue yonder, and we're chasing it with the boat. And pretty soon we start attracting attention. Pretty soon there's a half a dozen boats around. It's been going 15 minutes, and we can't catch this fish. We're talking Chinook, we're talking steelhead, you know, we're talking world record walleye. Here he comes with a carp. The mouth on this thing was this big around, Jimmy. It was just, we laughed so hard. I mean, it was fun.
But there again, that was the best fight we had the entire trip. So what was the difference? We had more fun with that fish, even though we were after walleyes. Although crankbaits may not always be your first choice when taking walleyes, let me tell you, they do work, especially when the fish are active. They're darn effective. I think the problem of it is when the crankbaits first got started, everybody thought of them as bass lures, you know?
Uh-huh.
And, boy, there's just a lot of cases where we use crankbaits for walleyes.
Well, you know,
We walleyes in little lakes, too.
and, you know, you get back to colors and so forth. We have found very definitely there's times that the natural finishes work better, and at times the bright colors work better.
Uh-huh.
And,
Well, you like that blueback shadling you were saying, but
yeah.
there's got to be other baits and other colors.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I got this little purple top wart on here with white sides, and we've caught them on gold, caught them on spawn orange, we've caught them on... Have we caught anything on chartreuse?
No, I haven't used a bright color.
Usually, chartreuse is my favorite color for
Yeah.
them.
But when they're up there chasing these shad, I like to go towards the naturals, the silvers and the black backs.
Anything with a silver,
Yeah, silver sides.
silver light white.
Yeah. It's got some white on it. Seems like it works a whole bunch better.
Now, that's a decent string of walleyes. I don't care where in America you fish. Lake Erie, they claim it's the walleye capital of the world. You're going to have to make that determination for yourself, but I'll guarantee you one thing. The fishing's out of sight. You know, there's no better way to remember the great times you've had fishing than with pictures. And if all too often your photos leave something to be desired, here's some helpful hints. 1, try to have the sun shining in front of your subject rather than from behind it, because backlit pictures tend to turn out too dark. 2, frame your subject accordingly. Don't get so close that you cut off someone's head or the fish's tail. But on the other hand, don't get so far away that you can't tell who's holding what. 3, take your camera with you. Your fish pictures will look much better taken on or near the water rather than your garage. Plus, it's a great way to practice catch and release and still prove to your friends that the big one really didn't get away. You probably heard about the Football Hall of Fame and the Baseball Hall of Fame and others. But did you know that there's a Fishing Hall of Fame? Yeah, a place where you can actually go see and kind of be a part of, if you will, the history of fishing, the people who made it, and the equipment that they used and they designed in the process of doing so. It's located in Hayward, Wisconsin, and today we're going to take you on a bird's eye view, or better yet, a muskie's mouth view, of the Fishing Hall of Fame in Hayward, Wisconsin with Director Bob Cotton. Come on along and join. I think it's something you'll really enjoy. Hello, Bob. How you doing?
Well, how you doing, babe?
Just fine.
Welcome to the National Freshwater Fishing Hall of Fame.
Thank you. Boy, a lot of things have changed since last time I was here.
I'm real happy you're here. Yeah, it's been many, many years ago since you were here, and now we've got this big fish. It's, what you're in, babe, is 500 tons of muskie. Now, when I founded this organization back in 1960, and it's been a volunteer project, you know. It's a nonprofit organization and so forth. We're preserving the history and the artifacts of fishing. And so here we are in this 500-ton muskie. It cost $500,000 to build. That was before inflation, incidentally. It'd be $1 million now. And in here we have a stairway. We have our contributors on the wall. We enshrine. We have people here with memorials and so forth. We have several display cases in here. And we've taken some of the outstanding things and put them in cases here. But the real guts of the museum, you know, is in the other buildings. We're going to go out there pretty quick and do our thing. But what I want to say is we have this fish here because the fish to me, or to us here, is like what the castle is at Disney World. It's something for the ferry to fly around. Let's face it, if we had buildings, you wouldn't be here. You came here to photograph the fish, right?
Certainly.
And the fishermen want to see a big fish, 500 tons, 4.5 stories high, and it's a half a city block long. I think we should go to the other buildings and look at other things now. How about that?
Sounds good.
Okay, fine.
Bob, this muskie is something else, you know? I mean, it's so huge, if you're not right here standing alongside of the thing, you can't see how awesome it really is. I mean, it's like a 3 or 4 story building.
It's 4.5 stories a month.
In its own lake.
It's on lake. We've got a pool around it.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah, you know, we're going to have a kids fishing contest here.
What's this?
We do this, well, the last Sunday in September every year is our 6th annual Fisherama. We bring in the elementary school kids and from the little tots on, and we feed them all the ice cream and hot dogs they can eat and drink, and And we let them fish. 200 kids show up. They catch a few hundred fish. We give them prizes. We teach them to fish.
What's this?
We make sportsmen out of them.
That's some of what's going in for them.
Well, we're filling some of the pool now from our aquariums and so forth. We want the kids to catch them.
Excellent.
We're going to teach them how to fish. We're going to make sportsmen out of them.
There you go. It's our philosophy as well, is teaching them how to
Well, you know,
fish.
if you teach a kid how to fish, you'll never go wrong.
Absolutely.
Never.
I tell you what, if you teach an adult how he can catch one more fish, you'll never go wrong either.
That's right.
Because he'll wind up taking the kids fishing more often.
You're right.
Bob, what do you have in this building?
They were in Wing 3, one of the rooms of Wing 3, and in here we display some old tackle boxes. We've got some old minnow buckets, and we've got a list of some of our recent members. And on the wall, as you see, we've got the Gadabout Gaddis here. We've got all his memorabilia, and Gadabout's an old-timer that, in fact, he's one of the first communicators that fishing has ever seen. He's written about it, broadcasted, and so on. He was very much like what you're doing today. He was many, many years ago.
Gadabout's probably older than some of these tackle boxes.
I'll be very frank with you. He's right around 90 right now.
And still fishing a lot.
Oh, yeah, he fishes right, and I know Gadabout. We visit with him every year.
Excellent. What else is here?
Well, we move on into through Wing 1 here. We've got about 5,000 to 6,000 plugs in here.
Bob, there's so many baits in here. I mean, there's got to be thousands of them, huh?
Well, we've got about 5,000 to 6,000 baits in here, Babe, and of course we've got more up in the archives room that we're preparing to bring down here into our Wing 1, which is our bait section.
You know, the thing that I find amazing is people say, well, here's a new lure on the market, you know, here's a hot new lure. Yet you come in and you look at the collection of the lures for the last 100 or 150 years, I'm sure some of them are that old, and you see that, hey, there's just every so many years they come out. Like over here, the weight forward spinners. That type of fishing has just turned on the last couple of years, yet you have any idea how old that bait is, Bob?
Well, it goes back to the early 1900s, but it's kind of like an ashtray in a car. You know, they changed the ashtray. It's not a new model. It's the same thing with baits. I feel there are maybe 25, 35 basic lures, and from there, a lot of them are offshoots. They're redesigns and remakes and renovations of the same thing. But this is what makes the world go round and makes fishing go round. It's what makes fishing fun, Babe. Here's a chipmunk, or a gopher. It's a gopher lure. See that?
That's a handmade gopher lure,
A handmade gopher lure.
When I was a kid, Bob,
the muskies grab that.
when I was a kid, everybody heard stories about floating the gopher out on the shingle until he got right over the hole.
And then jerk the shingle.
And then jerk the shingle out and catch him. There's somebody who did it.
Babe, we're in Wing 3 now. This is one of my favorite wings in the rooms of the four buildings of the museum building. And here we depict the history of lures, or rather reels. Reels have a very interesting history. We have old motors.
Boy, this one
that happens to be, if we can give them a plug, Sears and Roebuck came out with this in 1912, 1913. It's a motor go. It's a very, very rare motor. They made 3 models. We have all 3. This is the Martin. It's a restored Martin. Very, very good motor. It's no longer in the market. We've got some of the old Green Johnson, the Lockwood. Here we have, Babe, this is very interesting. This is the 1909 model of Ole Evinrude. This was restored by the Evinrude Company for the Hall of Fame at great cost. The Lowrance people who developed the fish finding depth sonic equipment.
Very familiar.
This is a history of from their very first little red box that they made onto the green box, onto the other models, into the graphs and so forth. In fact, we have their 1,000,000th unit right there that's been silvered, you know.
I see it.
And that was given to Carl Lowrance as a gift when they built that 1,000,000th unit. We have it here now. He thought it should be here, and we have it there in the case.
Along with housing all of the displays, antiques, and memorabilia on the history of fishing, the Hall of Fame has been the official keeper of freshwater angling records since 1970. And as such, their mounted displays and replicas of world-class fish are second to none, and are a most colorful and interesting addition when visiting the Hall of Fame in Hayward, Wisconsin.
Boy, you know, this thing is just fascinating. But I mean, the layout of it out here, the gardens, the different fish all over.
Well, we're sitting on 7 acres here of grounds, and we've got all these buildings and grounds, and we got a lot of memorial gardens out here. And
you mind if I just continue to look around a little bit?
Babe, we've been through here and we've seen a lot of things, but I don't think you've seen all of it yet. I think you should go out. I'll tell you what, I'll join you in the gateway in the administration building in a little while.
Okay, thanks,
you do your thing, and thanks for coming.
Okay.
Whether filleted, steaked, or whole, your fish can be prepared in your microwave oven with excellent results. To begin with, start by melting 2 tablespoons butter in your microwave. Brush the butter on your fillets. Then, salt and pepper, and then use a little paprika. A little wax paper on, and put it in the microwave oven. Then set your microwave on high for about 3 minutes. Imagine a whole meal cooked in less than 5 minutes. Only catching them was that easy.
You know, drag something loose. Another nice fish. Ooh, as a matter of fact, a beautiful fish. Oh, run back again. Where's my back reel? Come on, baby. Cotton picking walleye will make a run every time they see that boat. That just won't quit. I don't want you to get me up into the mucks, you girl. Yes, sirree. And that's a respectable walleye. You know, if you look in the U.S. Army survival kit, you'll find one lure, period. And that is a leadhead jig. They're not particularly this kind here, but it's still a leadhead jig. A jig is the most universal bait you can use to catch any species of fish, almost any species of fish that swims in fresh water, almost all the time. That doesn't mean other baits don't work, but if you really want to smack them, a jig is the way to go. This afternoon, I'm going to show you a bunch about jig fishing and catching walleyes. I got a whole mess of them on this point. Different techniques with it, different methods, and why you'd use one jig head opposed to another. I think you're going to enjoy it. There's a shelf here. It drops from, a shelf is about 12 to 15 feet, and then she drops off over the edge. And those walleyes a lot of times will get up and cruise on the shelf. And I found them ahead of time because where I'm fishing is typical. It's a typical point of, just like so many points in so many lakes and or reservoirs across the country and places that walleyes get up onto. But the key is what I'm doing, not necessarily where I'm doing it. Let me show you some things about jigs. First off, this little jig here is called a fuzzy grub. It's a little bit beat up from smacking a few fish here. But it's one type of a jig. It's got a plastic body with a marabou feather tail, and it gives an undulating swimming action. But there's other kinds of jigs that you'd use too. I'll grab my box here and show you some of the colors and styles and kinds of jigs. Now, as you can see, I carry a few of them. I fish a lot of jigs for a lot of different conditions, but particularly for walleyes. Those in live bait rigs are quite a bit. Now, this is a typical ball head. This happened to be a fuzzy grub again, and it has a lot of contrast color to it. But an all-around jig, I use a ball head. A lot for casting and just working like I'm working an edge or a ledge today. That's the kind of a jig I'm using. This particular jig here is built for fighting current or working in rivers. It's got a stand-up head somewhat, but it's got a kind of a scoop design on the side, so it forces it to dig down and really work in the river current. Now, this jig here is what you call a stand-up jig. It's a dingo. It stands on its head like so, and it's got a bucktail body rather than the rubber marabou body that these have. With the bucktail body, you might have a quarter-ounce bait, and this would be a quarter-ounce, and this will drop a lot slower because that bucktail will just kind of flutter down and catch some of the water as it's going down. And this type of a head design is also a good head design for working, say you're working through cabbage and you want to rip a jig and a minnow through the cabbage. Here's one other type, and I use it as a swimming type of a head. It's not a glider head jig, but it's just, if you're putting like a minnow straight out behind, it really allows it to swim the way the eye is tied off the top here. Swim in motion, or it's a good type of a jig to work under a bobber because it sits vertically, or horizontally, I should say, vertically, and holds your minnow like that so you can make it swim on a bobber type of a technique as well. Those are the basic 4 head designs. Now let me take you down underwater and show you how each one of these baits look underwater to the fish. This first bait is a fuzzy grub, which has a ball head jig, and is probably the most universal type of jig used by fishermen. They're great for bottom bouncing, and when tipped with some type of live bait, say a leech, minnow, or a crawler, they're the perfect ticket to entice a finicky walleye into feeding. Next, here's a flatfoot jig, which, as I explained, was designed specifically for river fishing.
Because of its unique head design and its ability to actually dig into the current, it allows you to fish lighter weight baits and maybe catch more fish. Then there's the dingo jig, which has a stand-up head, but it's dressed with bucktail. And if you didn't know, the hairs on deer are hollow, so when used on a jig like this, the lure will sink at a much slower rate than another type of jig with the same head weight. Finally, here's a quiver jig or a bullet-type head. This jig works well for vertical jigging or even for fishing under a bobber because it's designed to work horizontally in the water. This is my #1 choice for panfish because of its unique floss-type body and the lifelike swimming action it imparts. And when tipped with a small minnow or a piece of worm, there isn't a self-respecting bluegill or crappie that can resist them. Now that you know what these jigs look like underwater and how they're used, let's get into color and what my choices are under varying conditions. In cold water and very clear water, I like colors like these. Now this is pure white. This one has a fluorescent pink head. This one has a fluorescent orange head. This one has a fluorescent blue head. The blue I found in the middle of the day in very bright sunshine, very clear water will be the best. Orange in clear water, but real early in the morning, the orange and the pinks I like better. The white sometimes interchanges with the blue during the day. Now let's say that you're fishing clear water, but it's a little bit later on in the year. My favorite pick then would be a chartreuse yellow, this color right here. If it's that same condition, it's a little bit cloudy, I'd probably opt for the chartreuse green with the yellow feather on the back end. Or the lime, as you see here, with the contrast color of lime and black. Or here's a little Joe jig with the chenille body, and it's a yellow and black. Now, if I'm fishing very dirty water, I like the chartreuses and the lime greens again, as well as the fluorescent oranges and the brown oranges. Those combinations are very good in that condition. If you're fishing dark water or fishing at night, I like the black line combination you see here, anything basically dark at night. Now, let's say you're fishing clear water, but it's very deep. Then I'd go to higher contrast colors like this, but you'll notice these deals with purples, blacks, and blues, all of the different contrasts, with white in almost every case. That contrast is going to be critically important for you in deep water depth. Now, the key is don't get hung up on one color. Too many people have one and it's a favorite. And the truth is the color might change 5, 6, 7 times in the course of a day. You might have one color right at daybreak that's good. And then every half an hour, it'll change as the sun comes up. And then maybe the sun goes behind the cloud and it switches from yellow to green just for 20 minutes and then vice versa. Be versatile. Check a lot. Just don't assume that you're a good enough fisherman that you've caught all the fish out of that school.
We'll be right back with more good fishing after these messages.
I don't know if you can see it underwater. There comes out, and then there's a finger, a rock finger comes off down on this side. And those fish will come out of the deep water a lot of... I thought I had a bump there. They'll come out of the deep water a lot of times, and they'll follow up a finger like that, up into the edge, or like that ledge I was telling you about, like a food shelf. Ooh, that was a bump. Oh, there's one. Yep. Just got you following up here, huh? Oh, look at that fish. Boy, they come up, shake their head, and just as soon as they see that boat, man, down they go. That's when you've got to learn how to back reel them. Some of you may not understand back reeling. I'll maybe show you here in just a second if she makes another run. I've got my release off on it. When they make a run, you just back off and ease on them. I mean, these new reels have fabulous drag systems. And the new Fight and Drag is fabulous. But sometimes they can't even keep up. And if you put it and get used to back reeling and use that in addition to the drag, you can handle big fish even on light equipment. I've got a light little rod here. I'm going to get this fish in before I lose him screwing around here. Hold still here, baby. Ah. That's another nice fish. Ouch. Well, I always want to make sure you handle them right. Those gill rakers right here are just about as sharp, and back here is a razor. And obviously the teeth. Pulled a little body down, didn't you? That's a decent fish, fat little fish. Here, little girl. Just glides back on down. Now, let me get back to the point over here and see if we can get a couple more. And at the same time, I want to take a minute and show you some different ways to work a jig, because there's a lot of different techniques, if you will. It isn't just casting a jig out and letting it swim. There's a lot of things to it. Okay, now I'm holding the boat for the condition I'm fishing here in about 22 foot of water, and you need a locator for positioning. That's critical. Not necessarily for finding fish, but I'm casting up to the top of the break. Now, first rule with the jig is this. When you throw the bait out, you want to be able to mentally count it down. I'm using an 1/8 ounce fuzzy grub, and that bait with the leech will drop at the rate of about 2 feet per 3 seconds or so, something like that. So if I cast it up on the ledge, and then I mentally count it down to myself, 1,001, 1,002, 1,003, something like that, you just develop a system. It has to become automatic. Pretty soon you'll know exactly the depth that your jig landed in and where. So if you cast it too far, or if the break has changed and it's dropped faster, whatever, you can tell by working it with your jig, by counting it down. Second reason you do that is a lot of times when that jig is first dropping on down like this, the fish will come up off of the bottom if you've casted close to him, and he'll take it when the jig is falling down. And that being the case, say that you're in 14 foot of water, and the jig stops falling at about 8 feet or 10 feet, you know that there's a reason, and I recommend you set the hook as fast as you can. But you have to always remember those two factors anytime you're working with a jig, really, for any species of fish. Once it gets to the bottom, now you do various types of retrieve, depending upon water temperature. It's obviously summer here, and the fish are feeding, and the water's fairly warm, so they're moving very fast. I'm giving it a retrieve, and let me show you if I can with my hand here, and then I'll get back to fishing. Say that this is a drop-off, and here's that ledge here, and then it drops down to steeper water, or maybe it's shaped more like this, okay? So I'm throwing the jig so it lands up on the front part of the drop-off and letting it drop down here, and then swimming it so it's swimming near the bottom on here, and then when it gets to the edge, letting it free fall down that break, down below the lip. The aggressive fish are oftentimes up on the lip, but that doesn't mean all of them are, and sometimes the bigger fish will have a tendency to hang a little bit deeper and off of the rest of the bunch, and maybe cruise the bottom side of the lip, where the smaller fish, or the hungry ones at the moment, will cruise the top side of the lip. Because those fish, as I said, will move around the ledge like this. They'll maybe move around this entire point when they come up to feed. And casting, I don't want to mislead you. Now, the way I'm doing it, this particular technique, is very effective because the fish are relatively shallow and it's quite clear water. But at the same time, I could take my electric trolling motor and troll, if you will. I wouldn't want to use the gas motor in this case because it's so clear and it's so shallow that it'll spook the fish. You take your electric trolling motor and troll along it and just let the jig swim and again bounce it off the bottom. Or I suppose a guy could drift on it as well, but with the modern electronics and the things it can do for a fisherman, I can't see any reason to go to the old-fashioned drifting method. Trolling motor can be just as quiet and allow you a heck of a lot easier boat positioning. Oh, what a neat day out here today. Particularly neat when the walleyes cooperate like this. Oh, there we are. Yep. Yep. Ah! You was way up on the rocks there, huh? What do we got here? Oh, it's a walleye, I can tell. Big walleye sits there and thumps his head. Now hold still here. I haven't even seen this puppy yet. Really hanging deep. This could be a good fish. Oh, I can see it glowing down there now. Oh, this is a nice fish. Shake your head. Where's that net? Ooh! There's another advantage to back reeling. You can let it go with your finger there. You kind of can... You thought you were going to catch me off guard, didn't you? Sometimes easier to fish with a buddy and have something along to net these puppies. Yeah. Fat walleyes. Fat walleyes. I love them. They are just more fun. There you go. They're more fun. Now, yeah, they maybe don't fight as hard, but... And I shouldn't, you know, try and give you the indication that jigs are only good for fishing walleyes, because that's not the case. You can catch bass on them, you can catch pike on them. There are times I fish jigs for muskies. A lot of times I do for panfish, stripers, white bass, other types of fish. Sometimes you'll want to dress them with baits, like a live bait dressing as I'm doing right now. Sometimes you'll want to dress them with a pork rind dressing. Other times maybe a plastic dressing. But the key is the fact that you can catch a lot of fish on jigs. And I think you'll find that if you work on it, concentrate, and remember the fine points we covered here today, you'll improve your catches considerably.
We'll be right back with more good fishing after these messages.
I like to use on those special evenings when Babe and I have a chance to be alone. It's a romantic recipe that's so simple. It's called largemouth almondine. So grab a pencil and paper so you can jot this one down. Now here's the list of ingredients you'll need. 2 pounds of fresh bass fillets, 1/2 cup of melted butter, 1/2 cup of white wine, and 3/4 cup of slivered almonds. Have your melted butter in a baking dish like so. Then salt and pepper to taste. Next, pour your wine over the fillets. Now simply bake for 25 minutes or until your fish flakes easily. Now just simply sprinkle with some slivered almonds, and there you have it, the main course for a candlelight dinner for 2.
Should just about be everything, especially with the coffee. You can't forget the coffee. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the In Fisherman Specials. My name is Al Linder. For the next hour, I'll be your host on today's show. Hey, if this is the first time you've ever been with us, you're in for a real treat. The In Fisherman is what it says it is. It's special. We put a heavy emphasis on education along with entertainment. We use a teaching formula in every show that we call the FLP system of fishing. What it amounts to is basically the F stands for an understanding of the fish you fish for. A largemouth bass isn't a smallmouth bass, a northern isn't a muskie. Every fish has a different basic nature. The L factor is understanding the environment. The lake, pond, river, reservoir, whatever body of water you fish. Its structural makeup, the water clarity, the effects of the food sources in it, they make fish do certain things. The last part is the P factor or presentation. What's the best lure or bait or combination of both for me to use for the species of fish I'm fishing for? Sounds like a lot, doesn't it? But it really isn't. Today's show depicts the In Fisherman system of fishing to a T. Take a look at this.
Frantic Great Lakes salmon action with my brother Ron and Captain John Orvac. Tricks for taking high water bass with In Fisherman editor Dave Santa. A presentation tip from smallmouth bass expert Larry Dahlberg. We're joining editor Doug Stange on the ice with some fast northern pike tip-up action. You'll see a great catfish technique that works anywhere. Some of the hottest northern pike action ever filmed. I'll be right back with Tom Newstrom and some spring river walleye action.
Hey, with a lineup like that, you can't go wrong. Something for everybody. Hey, it's a good idea to keep a paper and pencil handy just to take a few notes.
These engines are melting snow and spring rains then turn rivers into torrents. Rising water and temperatures draw walleyes upstream into pre-spawn staging areas. Perhaps these same natural forces are what lure In Fisherman educators Al Lindner and Tom Newstrom to these exact same locales.
Is it a good one? Ooh, I had one pop me right under the boat, man. Right under, it's a better fishing man. Listen, nice fish, pretty fish. Ooh, come here, Bill. There you go. Ooh, another good one. Now look at that little teeny jig. That's the whole key, man. 16-ounce jig.
How many fish is that today, Al?
Tom, I know we caught 50. We caught at least 50 walleyes. I'm gonna put this one back, too. What we're covering today, folks, is a little bit on pre-spawn walleye movements on rivers. Pre-spawn fishing can be some of the fastest fishing you'll ever see on walleyes. And there's a few reasons why. One of the reasons I like fishing rivers early in the year for walleyes is that Rivers don't have closed seasons on them in most parts of the country. That's a fact. You know, like we've got a fishing season in Minnesota, in Wisconsin, in Pennsylvania, in Michigan. You know, but river sections, in most cases, in most of these states, there is an open walleye fishery available, and you can fish pre-spawn fish. And pre-spawn river fishing is the fastest, best walleye bite you're ever going to get. Let me give you some information that'll help you put more walleyes in a boat during the pre-spawn period. During this calendar period, you have more walleyes concentrated in a specific area than any other time of the year. Outside bends like this hold loads of fish. The fish gravitate toward sources of current, like dams or waterfalls. They'll hold off of eddy areas, slack water areas just adjacent to the current, like this. These areas of slack water are where most of the biters will be, and this is where you want to concentrate most of your efforts. The peak of the pre-spawn bite is around 40 degrees. Oh, one more area not to overlook is the mouth of feeder creeks or streams where water that's a little bit warmer dumps into the main river channel itself. I think that most people don't believe that little things in fishing make that much difference, like the difference between these 16th-ounce jigs we're fishing here and the 1/8 or 1/4 jigs or even 1/2 ounce that most of these other people are fishing. They just don't believe those little things are that important, and they really are.
Well, I tell you what, Al, these fish are just nudging this bait. I mean, they're just hanging on. Look at that fish.
Nothing like last night. They
Just
were
hanging on it.
Get him, Tom. Get him. Oh, I love it. Looks like a good fish.
Just another nice average fish. Nice average fish. This is a better fish, man.
Look at her. Look at her. Look at that. Ooh. Ooh, she's a nice fish now. No, no. Get away from that anchor. No, I got it. This is a fat one.
Try another one.
Yeah. Come on, yo. Yeah.
Nice fish.
Look at that one. It was barely just lip hooked with that little light. It was down its throat, but just tweaked. Just tweaked. No, I guess it was pretty solid. Them little light wire hooks really get in there. Tiny jig, folks, and nice-sized walleyes. I don't know, that's a female, ain't she?
Yeah.
You know what we're doing here? We're taking these females. Look at how bloated she is. We're going to leave these females spawn, and what we're keeping is the males, the smaller fish. And what you're doing is getting the best natural reproduction going back into the system that's possible. I believe you should catch a few fish to keep and eat, but on pre-spawn fish like this, usually the ratio of males to females is darn near 10-to-1. You know, so keep them pound-and-a-half, 2-pound fish, which are better eaters, and put back those walleyes like that, those 3s, 4s, 5s, and 6s, which are the heart of the fishery. And if you get a trophy fish like an 8, 9, or 10, keep that one, put it on a wall. That's fine. Understand selective harvest. There is a difference between catch and release and selected harvest.
There's one.
We need a net on that sucker. That's good. Tom, I think this is our last. Yeah, she's big enough to keep. I'll tell you what, that makes it, man. That makes plenty. That's a good round limit of nice males.
That's a nice bunch of fish, Al. That's plenty.
The main thing to remember during pre-spawn is you have lots of fish in specific areas. That makes fishing easy. The main areas that attract these fish are sources of current: dams, waterfalls, feeder creeks. The peak bite will be around 40 degrees, and a jig throughout the daytime is the best presentation you can use.
Stay tuned for in-fisherman Larry Dahlberg and wild northern pike action as the special continues.
I missed that fish. That felt like a big, big fish. Wow, he got my bait.
That was no bass, man. Look at this. You know what this is? Anybody that's fished in the North Country knows what this is. We're talking northern pike. Look at this. You're fishing without a steel leader. You're fishing bass. You set hooks and nothing. No bait, no fish, no nothing. Northern pike. See that? He chopped me off. People think northern pike. They think spoon. But you know what? There's a bunch of bass baits that are absolutely deadly on big northern pike. All you gotta do is start out with a steel leader. That's one thing I know for sure. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna rig the biggest, flashiest, gaudiest spinnerbait that I got in here, and I'm gonna stick it in front of that northern pike that just ate my jig and eel. I'm gonna get it back, hopefully. I think this big Roland Martin spinnerbait, look at this great big willow leaf blade, a tandem hook set up. We're looking at snake medicine right here.
Come on, get this thing untangled. Get it back out there. He's got to be within a few feet of where he was the first time. I barely felt him. He cut me off so fast. I'm sure he barely felt me. If it was anything but a northern, he wouldn't come back. But I'd say the odds are high that this fish is going to come back after the spinnerbait. Maybe off to the left just a little bit, and that narrows.
Look at that fish. You see him?
Nice, I'm gonna win.
There's a good fish right there.
That spinnerbait is just moving way too fast for it. It's cold water.
When they're in a mood like that, there's another bass bait that is deadly on these guys. And it's a soft plastic salamander, just like this one right here. Where did he go? There we go, there he is. Oh, look at that. Well, that's a nice stink, isn't it? Oh, Necro, he thought this was dinner. That's a nice big northern. I don't care what anybody says. Northerns are all right with me. Oh, look at this boy. He's kind of thin. Probably just finished spawning. He liked this whole piece of rubber, I'll tell you that for sure. See, he doesn't understand. He hasn't read all the magazines, and he doesn't know that that's a bass bait. Look at him. Let's stick him back in the water. He's good for the tackle industry. Well, as you can see, they bite on this soft plastic, especially these creatures. But it's still not the best bait to cover water with.
It's not the best bait because you have to work it too slow. You need something like a spinner bait that you can cast a long distance and crank in fast. If the fish don't hit it, you do like we did before. You jig them up with a vertical bait. Another thing that's really helpful, too, is having a great big old 7.5-foot flipping stick with 20 or 25-pound test line. You can make long casts and get hooked. And you can also keep those fish right up on top, or you can toe-to-toe it. There's a northern being a northern rolling up in the line, which is another reason you need that steel leader on there.
Yeah, this is what northern pike really all about. Isn't he a horse? This is a gator. Well, like I said at the beginning, the next time that you're out looking for northern pike, don't just think spoons or stick baits. Put yourself on a Roland Martin spinner bait, try some soft plastic, even a crankbait. Some of the baits that are your favorite and most effective for bass are going to be your favorite and most effective for big northern pike, like this one, too.
Stay tuned.
Oh, nice bass. Twitching that thing. Ooh, nice smallmouth. How's that for a smallmouth? You know, these fish love jigs any time of the year. And I think that smallmouth think that a jig is actually a crayfish. Of all the jigs that you can fish for smallmouth bass or any other fish to imitate a crayfish, there is none better than this little thing that I'm using right now. Let me show you how to rig it. The first half of the combo that we're using is a little split-tail grub. See what it looks like? It's kind of orange on the bottom and kind of brownish on top color, just like a crayfish. What I'm going to do is just bite off the first quarter of an inch or so, make it flat, then I'm going to rig it on this special jig head that has a little flat back and two little barbs on it to hold the grub in place. Just stick her right in the middle, and thread it on down, and make sure that the hook comes right out in the center of the grub. Yeah, like that. What's unique about this little split tail is the way that it works in the water. When you jig a regular jig up and down, the jig jigs up and down. These little split tails, because of the way that the water pressure acts on the surface of the jig, which is semi-rigid, as you twitch it, the thing kind of zings back and forth, and it acts just like a real crayfish in the water. Let me show you how it works. Now, you work this a little differently than you'd work a regular jig. You want to throw it out and let it settle. After it's on the bottom, you just kind of go, and that causes it to kind of zigzag back and forth, and let it back down again. Pop it, tight line it down. A lot of times I'll hit it on the drop, but a lot of times I'll hit it just as you begin to accelerate it. They kind of start to chase it, and then as it drops, they come up and smack it. You know, there's nothing that fights like a smallmouth pound for pound. Come on back. He really hammered that little grub. What a pretty little fish. Oh. Well, it looks like he got my grub. So I'm going to have to put on another one. And I'd suggest that the next time you're on your favorite smallmouth bass water, you do the same. Take a little split-tail grub, bite the head off, stick it on your jig, and you got yourself an instant crayfish.
The wind. Most times the angler's mortal adversary. However, for the ingenious, it can be made to be an ally. Let's join in fisherman editor Doug Stangley and guide Ted Jowett as they chase big pike on the snow-driven ice and learn how you can make fishing a friend instead of an enemy.
Oh.
Little guy. I'll leave it in.
Hey, Doug, that looks interesting. Why don't you show us how to rig that little contraption?
Wind tip-ups were designed to take advantage of the wind. After you set it up, the key is this rocker arm, which works via an adjustable spring. And the spring is adjusted based on the weight of the bait that you're fishing and the amount of wind that you have. The flap on the end of the rocker arm is what catches the wind and bobs the bait, which is what's attractive to fish. So it's a little different type of presentation than the other tip-ups that you have. Simply put the flag behind the spool, and of course the fish hits it, pulls it off, and just like the other tip-ups, you know that you've got a fish on. I want to show you one other thing while we're right here, and that it's a very important aspect of pike fishing, and that is the rigging involved. It is vital to use a very thin diameter, low test, like 18 or 27 pound test, braided, or actually the correct term is stranded wire. And we use what's called a quick strike rig. A quick strike rig is two hooks rigged in tandem. You got one on the bottom of your line, you got one maybe 2, 3, 4 inches up your line. The hooks should be small hooks, not large hooks. A lot of people picture big fish and they got to have a big hook. That's not true. These hooks break free very quickly on the hook set, and that's exactly what you need. They're also find flesh very easily. And here's how you'd rig them. Just simply, just barely under the skin. You've got the bait covered. You let the bait down. And when a fish hits this thing, you're not going to wait 20 seconds or 30 seconds. You're going to set the hook right now. But not too hard. Just a firm lift, remembering that these are small hooks that are going to break free quickly and find flesh. Hey, Teddy, your turn to get the ice. Whoa! There's one! Fish on! Yeah. Whoa! Explosion. Is there one there? You bet. Fish down there. Just a second. Oh, got him. Okay, I can't tell for sure. Fair fish. Ah, thank you. He's here. It's a fair fish. Oh, there he goes. Take it. Woo! Tough fish. Oh, all right, here he comes. Coming back. Right, I'm going to have to put a glove on my hand. We're talking 20-pound critter, gentlemen. That's a good one. Just get his head there. No, babe, way down there. Here, okay, here he comes. Here he comes. Oh, look at that. Oh, what a fish, Ted. That critter is beautiful.
So you see, the wind can be your ally after all. Coming up, writer Dave Sanda turns both wind and high water to his advantage.
Can you believe this cover? This is a natural lake. I came in here to fish the inside reed line and get out of the wind, and what do I find? A flooded forest. There's been so much rain this year that this lake has to be up a good solid 3 feet. And in fact, this is looking an awful lot like a reservoir, like I might fish down south. I think I'm going to fish it like a reservoir, fishing around these flooded trees, because I bet you the bass have adapted to this too. This is a real maze of cover, and it would take a long time to fish each bush and tree individually. I might be forced to do that if the bass aren't aggressive, but at least to start with, I'll try covering water quickly in search of aggressive biters. These are perfect conditions for a straight shaft buzzbait. I guarantee you that this baby will get their attention. Now the big question is, will they hit it? There we go. Oh, there he is. That's a pretty darn good bass, boy, and you can't let him get in that cover back in here. You gotta muscle him right out. Come on. Oh, yeah. Right up on the edge of this real heavy cover up in here. That's a pretty nice bass. Back you go. Well, that should be another one back in here someplace. Certainly enough hiding places.
This particular style of lure is extremely snag-free and is perfect for these overgrown conditions. As long as it keeps producing, I'll just keep sneaking along through the trees looking for active bass. The spaces between the trees provide natural casting lanes for me to fire the bait through, and that long flipping stick lets me steer my casts back to the boat with deadly precision. Plus, and it's a big plus, it gives me the muscle I need to jerk them out of their nasty hiding places.
I'm glad I got him out. Oh, yeah. Come here, baby. Can't mess around in that cover. God. Oh, look at that bass. That is one heck of a nice bass. Especially when you consider that he was back in the trees. No place to mess around with white line. 25-pound test and all the guts you can manage. Oh, that's a good fish. Back you go.
Water level plays a big part in the bass's world and greatly affects their location. For example, during normal water level conditions, the bass spread out in the available weed growth throughout the various depth levels. During low water conditions, however, the reduced shallow water habitat drives the fish away from the shoreline, forcing them to make heavier use of the deeper weed zones. By contrast, during high water level conditions, the greatly expanded shallow water habitat attracts numerous bass to the wealth of shallow cover.
Tight fit. Come on, up. Out, there you go. Oh, there he is. Out from the tree.
Boy, in the shallow water, there's nowhere to go but up. Ah, there's nothing I like better than going toe-to-toe with topwater bass. The next time you encounter high water level conditions, remember to check out the shallow cover. There may be a few more critters back in the forest than you might believe.
Oh, that's beautiful. Come on. I'll fight you in the boat. Man, you cannot beat that kind of fishing at all.
In waters where fishing pressure is down in the river, according to local water conditions, so do walleyes in Lake Erie's western basin. Here, constant suspension is a way of life. In-fisherman publisher Ron Lindner, along with his friend Captain Jim Fofrich, demonstrate how to effectively catch suspended walleye in summer, as they give us some easy-to-apply walleye wisdom.
20. There's a 20 count. You want a lot of 20. I'm going to start letting it go down. Some of those smaller fish were up higher, Jimmy. And maybe they start dropping. There we go.
No bigness, John.
Size? That's a walleye.
He's a nice fish, but he ain't no brute for sure.
Okay. What time? I mean, what depth?
I got him about 20 count already.
20?
Yeah. Just a nice fish.
What Jim and I are doing here on these huge windswept waters is fishing for suspended walleye with weight-forward spinners, using what is called the countdown system. Now, this is what a typical weight-forward spinner looks like. It has a lead head that provides weight for casting and sinking. It also has a spinner which flutters when the bait is dropping and turns when retrieved. The pivoting hook here is most usually dressed with a balled-up knife bow. It's simple, but effective. Because of their design, these lures are let to fall to a certain depth by what is called the countdown system. A lure is cast out and a count is started, using the word 1,000 for every foot of drop. Like this: 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, 6,000. At that point, the lure should be about 6 foot down. At the 20,000 count, it would be 20 foot deep. At the 30,000 count, the lure would be 30 foot deep. Yep, simple but effective.
Still, they're nice, look healthy.
Folks, are these some fish or are these some fish? Go lay them down there, Jimmy.